Hi guys, it's Crystal. I hope you guys are all doing well today. I hope you guys are out there and enjoying the spring weather. I can't believe it's finally spring. It feels like winter. Yeah, Lola's here today too. It feels like winter has gone on for an incredibly long time. So hopefully you guys are out there and enjoying all of this weather and how nice it's been. If you guys are new to this channel, like I said before, my name's Crystal and I do Canadian true crime or true crime with a Canadian twist. From time to time, I do visit other nationalities so we can talk about crimes there. But for the most part, I do mostly Canadian true crime. So if that interests you guys, hopefully you will like these videos. Hopefully you'll subscribe. Hopefully you'll hit the notification bell. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And hopefully you guys will leave me some comments. I do like to hear what other people think about certain, sorry, Lola's having a moment today. I do like to hear what other people have to say about other crimes. And if you guys are returning subscribers, you guys already know how much I love you and how grateful I am that you guys choose to let me into your homes and your lives for an hour, sometimes an hour plus a week. It means a lot to me that you guys are supporting me that way. So today we're going to go back to Ontario again. For the most part, the crimes that we covered were either from Toronto or Queensville when we did Christine Jessup, which is just right outside of Toronto. Today we're going to go a little bit farther down. We are actually doing a case from Southwest Ontario. So just for a few points, guys, I guess, Ontario is the third largest province out of all of the provinces and territories in Canada. It's incredibly populated too. There's about 14,745,040 people, and that's as of 2020, that reside here in Ontario. Ontario, of course, the capital of Ontario is Toronto, but not only that, we're also home to the nation's capital of Ottawa. And Ontario, actually Toronto in Ontario is the most multicultural city in the world, guys. So that is a great thing for Ontario. Sorry, guys, I really don't know what Lola's doing today. Sorry. So as for the crime rate for Ontario, there's about 1.69 homicides per 100,000 people that live in Ontario. So this equates to roughly about 169 homicides a year in Ontario. There's not as many as what some people would think. And in fact, Ontario, out of the rankings, was about fourth from the bottom. It's midline, but like on the lower level of midline. It's the crime rate is below BC and it's above PEI. So we're about fourth from the bottom there. And this is for homicide, guys, per 100,000. So there's about generally between 169 murders to 266. It fluctuates like most rates per year in Ontario. The safest place in Canada is actually in Ontario, and that's Kingston, Ontario. It has the lowest crime rate for violent crimes in all of Canada. So, you know, maybe because it was the home of the former Kingston Penitentiary and because Millhaven's so close by, but it's actually the safest place in Canada. And it is also the safest place for women, international women, to travel alone to in Canada. That's not to say we don't have enough of our own cities and towns here in Ontario that are dangerous. We do have several that are on the 25 most dangerous places to live in Canada. Timmins comes in at number 10. Timmins, Ontario, the birthplace of Shania Twain, is actually at number 10. Just give me a second, guys. You know I like to get it right. After that, it's the Kenora area at number 12. Thunder Bay at number 14. Actually, this surprised me because Thunder Bay is the most dangerous place to live in Ontario proper. Napanee at number 20. Brockville at number 21. And Elliott Lake at number 22. So those are the most dangerous places to live in Ontario, according to statistics. I do also want to remind you guys that there is a disclaimer in this video. Like I always say, these videos are for educational or entertainment purposes only. And if you guys do choose to leave comments, particularly about this case, please no hate. There's enough hate in the world out there. We don't need to add to any more of it. And it is highly likely that someone that knows the family or a relative themselves of this case might comment on this. So please, we have to keep the hate down, guys. We're just here to talk about this case. So this is actually a hard one for me, guys. This is a case from my own home municipality, my own home region. If you guys know, I have mentioned it before. I live in a small area called Chatham, Kent. So Chatham, Kent is actually right between London and Windsor. It's almost right smack in the middle. You guys may or may not have heard of Chatham, Kent. We're a smaller area. Chatham's been referred to as a town. Is actually a city, a very small one, but it's our core area. Most of the other regions around it, it is our only city. Most of the other regions around it are more rural. Wallaceburg, I guess technically could be a city as well, and it's in Chatham, Kent, but most of the other areas are extraordinarily small and rural. We're known for our agriculture, guys. We grow things like soybeans and wheat. According to Wikipedia, we grow rubber tree plants, but that's not true. We grow tobacco, so I think maybe that's what they meant. But it is a very small spot. Now, you guys might have heard of Chatham, Kent, because Chatham, Kent's major claim is that it was a spot on the Underground Railroad. South Buxton, for an example, is a community that was founded entirely by ex-slave members. And Dresden itself, which is my hometown, is very small. It's only 2,700 people, is the home of Uncle Tom's Cabin. A man named Josiah Henson was an ex-slave, and he settled here. The original settlement name was the Dawn Settlement, and then it became known as Uncle Tom's Cabin later on. So it's historic, and you can come here and visit it, and just see what the lifestyle was like and everything else. I cannot tell you how great Uncle Tom's Cabin actually is. The staff is wonderful. There's a lot of interactive videos that you guys can watch. There's a lot of props there. You can actually visit the homes as well that Josiah Henson built. And for those of you who don't know, Josiah Henson was actually the inspiration for Harriet Tubman's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. I'm sorry, Lola is really going nuts here, guys. I'm trying. So that is Chatham, Kent's major claim to fame. We are a tourist area. However, I feel so bad saying this because it almost feels like I'm betraying my hometown. However, Chatham, Kent is extraordinarily tight-lipped about violent crimes. Yes, you will hear about drugs. We had a really large drug bust here not that long ago. I actually knew the person that was involved. It's a small area, so of course a lot of us know each other. So those things will be reported, but when it comes to murders or rapes or anything like that, attempted murders even, you'll hear very little about it. Just cursory information, and you're not going to get much of a follow-up. I tend to believe it's because of the tourist trade and that Chatham doesn't want people who would come and visit the area to think that it's dangerous. So extraordinarily tight-lipped. And even within the communities, yes, we'll talk about crimes and rumors, of course, in hushed tones with each other, but we don't say much outside of the community. So this is one of the first times that it's really going to be talked about. It is not the case you guys are thinking. There is one major case from Chatham, Kent. We will cover it, but this is a different case. And I actually wrestled with myself about doing this case. I knew I wanted to do it, but I want to do it with the utmost respect to the victim and to his family. So case in point, for the fact that Chatham, Kent does not release a lot of information. And that would be, I'm giving you two stories today, guys. You're actually getting two stories in one. That would be the case of Mr. Brown. His name was actually Mr. Clinton Brown, and he was a World War II hero. He actually went over and fought, and he was captured in Italy and taken as a prisoner of war. He spent 18 months as a prisoner of war there. When the war was over, of course, he was released and he came back home. And he lived here in Dresden for most of his life, from what I could gather, other than the fact that when he was overseas fighting. He was about 61 in 1975, and he was supposed to have gone to the doctors that day. Now, his family says he was supposed to have gone. There are members of the community that said they did see him leaving the doctor's office. It's unknown at this time if he actually made it there. But he completely disappeared into thin air in 1975. I can remember talking about this case with my nanny, because it was the only time my nanny ever mentioned aliens. That was one of the ongoing theories about what happened to Mr. Brown, was that he was sucked up right off of Main Street by aliens. I remember my nanny saying that. And for the next however many years, that's all I could picture when I thought of Mr. Brown. In 2010, a man was doing some renovations on a home in Dresden. This is a rental property. It has actually, it had, I'm not sure now, it had been a rental property for 40 years, guys. So there were a lot of different tenants coming in and out of there. And Mr. Brown was actually a partial tenant of the area as well. His trailer was about 500 meters from this home. So he was doing renovations when he discovered an old abandoned well. He pulled the boards off the well, looked inside, and saw a skeleton. Of course, most of us in Dresden at that point in time, because the skeleton was really old, guys, assumed it was Mr. Brown, assumed we had found out what happened to Mr. Brown. And originally, the case was suspected of being homicide. It was originally classified as a homicide, because how did Mr. Brown get into a well with boards over top of it? He didn't fall through the boards. The man doing the renovations actually had to pry the boards off, and he was clearly seen in the well. How did he get there? How did no one find him prior to that? Now, the well itself was about 4 meters deep, so that's about 13 feet, guys. And it was 2.6 meters across. That's about 6.5 feet, so obviously somebody can get into it. And there was only a meter of water in it. That would be 3 feet, guys. So I would assume, yes, a skeleton you could definitely see. They looked into it. Of course, this was in April of 2010 that Mr. Brown's skeleton was found. They had to look into it. They had to make a positive ID, and they were able to do so by July or August of 2010. After that, surprisingly, amazingly enough, the coroner found out that Mr. Brown was uninjured before going into the well, but if you push somebody, guys, you're not necessarily going to injure them if you push them into an area. Regardless, these are just my thoughts. So it was later said to be an accident. My main concern is, how did the boards get over top of the well if Mr. Brown was already in it? If someone could clearly see him in there, how did the boards get over top of him? But regardless, it was never mentioned again. Nothing else has ever been mentioned again. I have not found an article past 2010 ever mentioning what happened to Mr. Brown. So it was very kept tight-lipped. That was the end of that. I guess I'll leave you guys to your own devices when it comes to what happened to Mr. Brown. I have my own theories, but this is not the video for that. Today's case, you may know about. It's possible, because it spanned more than just Chatham-Kent. So it's possible that people in Ontario have heard of this case. I don't know if anybody anywhere else has heard of this case. Today we are doing the case of Donny Clubb. If you guys do want it from Chatham. If you guys do want to see a picture, just give me 1 second, guys, and I'll pull one up. I'm trying to get it so that there's no glare on it. That in the tub right there is little Donny Clubb. So Donovan Gordon Donny Clubb was actually born August 23rd of 2003. His parents are Courtney Catton, C-A-T-T-O-N, and Matthew Clubb. And everybody in the family always called him Donny, so we're going to refer to him as Donny. His parents split up at some point in time. I'm not totally sure when. Most of the information that I gathered was from Courtney and her side of the family. I do have a few quotes from Matt, but most of it is from Courtney and her side of the family. So by 2005, definitely the parents had broken up. Now, I did hear with reference to Matt that it was a domestic situation. I don't know if it's for certain. And we aren't here to judge Donnie's parents. They didn't have anything to do with this. They were both very young. Both of his parents were only 21 in 2005. So they would have been 19, possibly 20 when Donnie was born. And this case did happen in 2005. So Donnie himself was only 22 months old at the time that this happened. Regardless of whatever happened, his parents did decide to go their separate ways. I also heard that Matt had not seen his son since February and it was court ordered, but I don't know for certain, guys. There's a lot of conjecture with stuff like this, so we can't say for absolute certainty what happened. What is known is that both Matt and Courtney deeply loved Donnie. He was their only son together. He is actually Courtney's only child. I don't know if Matt has other children now, but he was their only child together, and he was very much loved by all of his extended family as well. He was described as a very energetic little boy, full of life. He just loved to be alive, guys. He was full of energy. He was always moving, and like my youngest daughter is like that, full of life, always moving. He was always moving, always happy. He loved to play with other kids. He got along very well with them. And what is known is that as of 2005, he and Courtney resided on Edgar Street in Chatham. Now, Edgar Street, okay, I'm not great with directions, guys. So even though this is my hometown, I do everything by landmarks. I don't do it by street names. So for reference, if you want to know, Edgar Street is actually a street just off of where Park Ave West and LaCroix Street cross. So it's an offshoot. It's just a little side street. And Courtney, and like I said, Courtney had primary custody over Donnie, so they both lived on Edgar Street at the time. What is known is that sometime in 2005, I think it was early 2005, Courtney started to date a man, have a relationship with a man named Sean Palmer. Now, like I said, Courtney and Matt were 21 and Donnie was 22 months old in 2005. He was not quite 2. Sean Palmer was 36. He was about 15 years older than Courtney, but her family at the time thought that the relationship was a good thing for her. They thought she would benefit from it because Sean seemed like a nice guy. He was older, he was more educated. They thought he would have a really good influence on Courtney. So her family was very accepting of this relationship. What is also known is, I believe it was April of 2005. I'm not totally sure, guys. Like I said, it was very hard for me to get information about this. By April of 2005, as far as I can tell, all 3 of them were living together at the Edgar Street residence. So on June 27th of 2005, Matt said that he was going to go on a fishing trip, and he asked Courtney if he could take Donnie with him. This strikes me as odd, guys, because there were no other kids that were going. And Sean Palmer did have his own kids at the time. I do want you guys to understand that. I don't know how many they were or how many there were. I don't know if he had more than one mother of his children. I don't know how their relationships ended. I don't know anything about that. It was very hard for me to find information on him. But what is known is that he did have children at the time, and he asked Courtney to take her son with him, and she gave her permission. Courtney trusted him. They'd been in a relationship for a couple months, a few months at least. He never gave her any reason not to. He never showed anything to her untoward or that made her believe he wasn't a good guy. And this was a pretty stable male figure in Donnie's life. Like this, you know what I mean? Like, they lived together. So he saw Donnie pretty much every day. She would have no reason to believe that he would do anything untoward with Donnie, and particularly since he had his own kids. And she may have thought at the time that this would have been a really good bonding experience for the 2 of them to go out and go fishing and do those things. I'm assuming because Donnie loved to be outside, I'm assuming that he would have loved to have done something like this anyway. There were no other adults that were going. There were no other children that were going. It was only Sean and Donnie. And this fishing trip was to take place at a place named Guildford, Ontario. Uh, Sean's family had a cottage up there. Now, I actually had to look up Guildford. I'd never even heard of it before. It's about 26 minutes from Barrie, guys. So that would be what would seem to be the closest city. It's about an hour and 4 minutes from Toronto and an hour and 32 minutes from Kitchener-Waterloo. I do want you guys to keep that in mind. So in total, it's about 3 hours and 13 minutes from Chatham itself. So she agreed. As far as I know, the trip was only supposed to last 2 days. They left on Monday. Monday was the 27th. They were due to be back Wednesday, which was the 29th. And everything went the way it went. When they got back late at night, when Sean got back, it was late at night, guys. Courtney, of course, asked where Donny was, and Sean told her that Donny was asleep downstairs in the basement. Like I said, it was very late. She had no reason to suspect anything untoward from Sean. She trusted him. He'd never given her a reason not to, so she just took that to be true. As far as I know, the two got into bed together and went to sleep. At 5:30 in the morning, Sean Palmer left the Edgar Street residence. So this would be 5:30 in the morning on Thursday, June 30th. He left and essentially disappeared. So Courtney got up, and I'm sure she was excited to see her son. She was probably thinking he was up as well. Went upstairs in the basement, searched for him. Donny was nowhere to be found. He had also essentially disappeared. Immediately, Courtney called the police. An investigation started at 10:48 a.m. on June 30th for the missing boy. He was believed to have been abducted at that point in time by Sean Palmer. Sean Palmer was the last person to have seen Donny. I know there were stories at that point in time. I can remember it very well. I was at work when the Amber Alert, there was a nationwide Amber Alert that went out. I can remember hearing the Amber Alert and just breaking out into goosebumps because it was Chatham. And I actually know people who know the family, and I know people who know the perpetrator. So, yes. An Amber Alert went out. And about 200 plus volunteers came out to search for Donny in Chatham, because this is where we all thought he was. I also heard a rumor that either Sean abducted him from the basement that night, the night of the 29th, for whatever reason. And that either that or that he had either Courtney, which is completely untrue, or an associate of his help him kidnap Donny. These stories are completely untrue, guys, and we are going to get into what happened in a little bit. But at this point in time, police from Chatham-Kent did have a warrant to arrest Sean Palmer on abduction charges, abduction alone. So, of course, massive search ensued, and they knew that Sean Palmer had links to the Kitchener-Waterloo area. This is why I keep mentioning Kitchener-Waterloo. So Waterloo Regional Police looked for him and were able to locate him. They must have had some type of information. I don't know what it was, guys. I'm sorry. I feel bad for having to say I don't know so much, particularly about my hometown, but I'm not sure what information they had. They must have known from family members or from Courtney herself that he had relatives in the area or he had someplace to stay in the area. And they were able to locate him. It was either later on the 29th, or sorry, later on the 30th of June, or on July 1st. Regardless, they went to the residence. They asked him to produce Donny. They asked him to see Donny, and he couldn't. So he was immediately taken into custody on that abduction warrant at that point in time. What is known is that on July 1st, which is Canada Day for us, guys, that's the day that we became a nation in 1867. So Canada Day is a very big holiday for us. This was a Friday. And what is known is that he confessed. The story that he confessed was the one he also told at his trial in Kitchener. Of course, the trial is going to be in Kitchener because I'm guessing they assume the crime happened in Kitchener, but evidence of the crime was in Kitchener. was in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. It actually wasn't in Kitchener. It was in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. So his trial was in Kitchener. This actually spans 3 areas in southwestern Ontario and above. Sorry, not just southwestern Ontario, in Ontario. Sean told police that sometime during the 2-day trip, I tend to believe it was the 29th. That's what, well, I don't tend to believe that actually, but that's what he told the officers, was that on the 29th, Donny was throwing a tantrum because he missed his mother and he wanted his mother. He's 22 months old. You know, I know he knows Palmer. I know he had spent time with him. I know they lived together, but you know, when you're a baby, you want your mom, and he wanted his mother. So he was throwing a tantrum, according to Sean Palmer. He held the diaper-clad baby to his chest. He was only wearing a diaper. And he put his hand over his mouth for a total of 5 minutes until Donny went silent. This is a man who had his own children, guys. He was 36, a man with his own kids. And this was the way he chose to deal with the situation. I mean, it was the 29th. They were going to be going back home anyway. I have no idea why he didn't just cut the trip short, load Donny into the car, and drive him home. Most people know that when babies are in cars, they tend to fall asleep. I don't know why he didn't do that. Instead, he chose to suffocate Donny. Then, instead of calling police or an ambulance, instead of calling a family member, instead of calling anybody for help, okay, he did not do that. Instead of dropping Donny off at a hospital anonymously, at a church, at a police station, anything like that, he did none of those things. Instead of doing that, he dressed Donny's body, shoved him into a black hockey bag, you know, the big black duffel hockey bags, put him in the car, and took him to Cambridge. This is why I have such problems with this case, because if the crime was supposed to have happened at the cottage, he then drove an hour and 32 minutes with Donny's body in the car. I don't know about that. If not, what were the two of them doing in Kitchener-Waterloo? They weren't supposed to be there. They were supposed to be at the cottage. That part confuses me a lot, guys. But regardless, he took Donny and he left him in a wooded lot in Cambridge. This was between the Grand River, so that's the river that runs through Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo, and a golf course. So he left him there at this wooded lot. That's what it's described as, a wooded lot. For those of you who don't know, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge are the Tri-Cities. They're actually all connected. Once you leave one, you're right into another one. So once you're out of Cambridge, you're right in Kitchener. Once you're out of Kitchener, you're right in Waterloo. There's no like definitive markers like that. It's just a sign that says you're now entering this area. So it's the Tri-City area, guys. They're all connected together. Sean then said he went home that night. If he had come home from Cambridge, he probably would have taken him about 2.5 to 2 3/4 of an hour, depending on how you drive. And told Courtney her son was fine and downstairs asleep in the basement, got into bed with her, and was there for a bit. On the early morning of June 30th, he got back in his car, 5:30 in the morning, he left. Drove back to the wooded lot in Cambridge. He would have been there at what, about between 8 and 8:30 a.m. This is a.m. Poured gasoline all over Donny's tiny body and lit him on fire. He then drove back he then ended up in Kitchener. So of course at this time, he was arrested for second-degree murder and indignity to a human corpse. They dropped the abduction charges because when Sean said the crime happened, it was during a time when people knew that Donny was with him, and he'd had permission to have Donny with him, so he hadn't technically abducted him. I know, it's hard. It's hard because it's a little kid. So disclaimers, I'm really sorry, guys. So they didn't find Donnie's little body, his remains, what was left of him, until the 3rd of July, but they were able to bring home what remained of him back to his family so that they could at least bury what was left of their son and their grandson, nephew, so on. Sorry. Courtney, of course, immediately broke up with him. A lot has been said about Courtney. She didn't do anything wrong in this case, guys. She lives with a tremendous amount of guilt. In March of 2006, yeah, sorry, this bothers me. It bothers me a lot. Sean Palmer pled guilty to manslaughter and indignity to a corpse. Manslaughter. He was able to plea it down. I've got a couple direct quotes from the prosecutor and the defense, guys, so just give me 2 seconds. Okay, so like I said, both the Crown and the defense agreed to this plea deal. They agreed to let this happen. A man named Paul Bailey was the Crown attorney at the time covering this case. And he said that this was not an easy decision for any of them to make. But they felt it to ultimately be the right decision to make in the case. Bailey said, quote, "When Mr. Palmer took custody of Donnie, he never had any intention of hurting him," end quote. David Jacklin was obviously Sean Palmer's defense attorney, and he said that the plea deal, quote, this makes me mad too, fit the circumstances of the crime, end quote, and quote, "there was never an intent to kill," end quote. Now, the fact that Sean Palmer pled guilty did go a long way for him, and both Courtney and Matt were able to read out victim impact statements. Courtney said, quote, "Not only did you kill him like that," quote, "not only did you kill him, like that's not enough, you completely destroyed him," end quote. And Matt said, quote, "I feel that I have lost everything. There is an empty hole now that will never be filled," end quote. Now, guys, I have no idea if Sean Palmer expressed remorse. I'm going to assume he probably did, but I have no idea if he actually expressed remorse at this point in time. I don't know what he said at all at this point in time. What I do know is that he was sentenced, found guilty, obviously. He pled guilty, and he was sentenced to 13 years. Because he had already been in custody for a while, though, he only had to serve 11 years and 8 months because he had already fulfilled part of the deal. Courtney herself, completely devastated over this. This has gutted her completely. She feels an immense amount of guilt over the fact that she let this man into her life and that she let Donnie go on the trip with him. She feels so guilty about this. It has destroyed her. She has never married after this, and she refuses to have any more children because she can't forgive herself. She just can't forgive what happened, and she doesn't feel that she should have any happiness because of this. She's actually spent time in the hospital due to depression stemming from this incident. And Matt himself was completely gutted as well. This was his son, and it was taken away. He was taken away from him in such a horrible manner. The whole entire extended family feels a deep, deep amount of grief for this. Now, Sean Palmer served 6.5 years in both maximum and minimum security prisons here in Ontario. I don't know which ones. I just know that he served 6.5 years before he applied to be part of a program in BC. This program, Lola, God, she's bad today. She is going off today. This program is part of Restorative Justice here in Canada, and it's something akin to a healing circle. It's an indigenous institution that he wanted to go into so he could further his learning about indigenous. Just hold on one second, guys. I'm just gonna let the dog out. Come on, Lily. Justin. Just a second. Come here, Lily. Come here, girl. Come here. Lily. Hey. Sorry guys, sorry about that. So this program is actually part of Restorative Justice. And if you guys don't know what Restorative Justice is, it's technically the offender and the victims or the victims' families get together and try to work things out, so to speak. The offender has to show a great deal of remorse for this. They have to be willing to talk about these things, and it's supposed to be healing. It's a cultural and a traditional way that Indigenous people deal with crime, okay? So it's supposed to be a way for both parties involved to heal. Restorative Justice, he wanted to take part in this because he said that he wanted to learn more about the traditions and the culture of the Indigenous people. I don't know if he's Indigenous himself, guys. I have no idea about that. That's why he put forth that he wanted to be involved in this program in BC. It's actually at a place called Quickwecks Whelp Institute in BC. It used to be Elbow Lake Institute, and it's in Harrisonville, BC. I believe it's in Harrisonville. Just give me 1 second, guys. I just want to make sure I know this. Yeah, it's in Harrison Lake, actually, BC. And this is a minimum security prison. That means there's no fence around it. There's a lot more rewards. People are allowed to go to and from the institute. And he also wanted day parole at this point in time as well. 6.5 years. 6.5 years later. So he said because it was steeped in the traditions and everything else. Now there's a woman, her name is Evelyn Zellerer, and she helped found Piece of the Circle. That's the program that's put forth by the Institute. It's supposed to inspire and empower leaders to transform conflict into something better and build relationships based on that. Quote, "Peacemaking circles is an amazing approach to conflict, and I've not found a more powerful process in the world," end quote. This is Evelyn Zellerer that's saying this. And to some extent, she's right, guys. She's not actually wrong about it. Restorative justice does work. If the offender wants to put forth the work, first of all, if the victim's family agrees to take part in it and agrees to let this happen. But it's if the offender shows that they're growing as a person, shows that they're incredibly remorseful for the crime that they've done and want to atone for that crime. That's the way a healing circle or restorative justice works. The major case in point about this is a guy named Warren Glowatsky. Most of you probably, if you're from Canada, know who he is. There was a girl in BC, in 1997, and her name was Rena Verk. She was swarmed by a group of people that pretended to want to be her friends so that they could get her out into this one area. They swarmed her, beat her up, etc., etc. Eventually, they said, okay, she's had enough. And they left. The majority of the group left. And what is interesting about it is that everybody in the group, except one person, they were all girls. But they were young girls. They were like 14, 15, 16, maybe 17 at this point in time. Rena herself, I believe, was only 15. So Rena started to leave, and Kelly Ellard and Warren Glowatsky then took it upon themselves to lead her down to another area by water, beat her up some more, and Kelly Ellard held her head underneath water until she died. Kelly Ellard has never taken responsibility. She's had several trials and she's been in trouble more. She's never taken responsibility for what she did. Warren Glowatsky did. He actually spoke to Rena's family, and her family are very nice people. And he expressed his remorse, and he wanted to work through this with them. And they did. They were able to forgive him because restorative justice worked for him. He is a very firm proponent of restorative justice. So it did work in the case of Warren Glowatsky. Did it work in the case of Sean Palmer? Here's the thing. Sean Palmer said at some point in time that the reason that he burned Donny's body was to cremate him. So in a native ceremony, in an indigenous ceremony, so that his soul could be released into the great beyond. He cremated him because of that. It was, quote, not to hide any evidence or anything, end quote. Not to hide anything. So he says. He said that was the reason why he burned Donny's body, because it was a religious ceremony. Now, Zellerer, of course, the woman, or Zellerer, the woman that runs Peace of Circles, went on to say, quote, the person who has done the harm has an obligation to make things right. So we look at justice more about healing and meeting the needs of all parties, end quote. And as, all parties, okay. Palmer was actually transferred November 20th of 2012 to this institute. And he was also granted day parole at this point in time. Like I said here, not to hide anything. Oh, guys, I can't believe he said that. He said he burned Donny based on the religious teachings of Indigenous peoples in Canada. So like I said, actually, I may not have mentioned it. Donny's grandma's name, one of his grandparents' name, was Cheryl Riom Catton. This would be Courtney's mother. So she's kind of like a spokesperson for the family. Most of the articles I read, it was either Brittany or Cheryl that was talking, that was giving information. So Cheryl said, in regards to this revelation of cremation, quote, it's a holistic, the cremation, or ritual way that the native people would have done, and using incantations, herbs, and sticks, but that is not the native way anymore. And she's right. It hasn't been the native way for many hundreds of years, but... And to me, the fact that he is going to a native hut to continue to learn about the native ways after he did that to my grandson is just like punishing us again, end quote. She's angry because of the destruction of her grandson's body. And the fact that Sean Palmer would say that he cremated him, quote, not to hide anything, but as a way to release his spirit, like Native American people do, or sorry, Native Canadian people do, Indigenous people in Canada do. This is what he said. I don't know if he started to talk like this until he learned about this minimum security institution he could go to. I don't know if he did, but regardless, I will tell you that no one in Donny's immediate family was ever contacted about the fact that he was getting moved here. They were never asked what they felt about that. They were never asked about the circumstances surrounding it, anything like that. He was just moved. So she says that he could have gone, Cheryl says that he could have gone anywhere else in Canada and it would have been fine. But the fact that he's using the fact that he's going to a Native institute and saying the reason why he burned her grandson's body is so that he could release his spirit in a Native way, just it really does not sit well with the family. The fact that he's going on to learn more about teachings about it, and I don't think it has anything to do with the teachings. I think it has I think it's the fact of the matter that he said he burned the body not to hide any evidence, but because it was a Native teaching. I don't know if he's Native at all, guys. I don't know if he had anything to do with this before learning about this institute or restorative justice. I don't know. I just know this is what he said about it. For the record, too, neither the warden at the institute nor Miss Zellerer, the person that co-founded the circle, knew about what Sean Palmer did to the body. They didn't know that he cremated Donny in a ritual. They had no idea about that. They knew nothing about that. They never asked the family, or they would have known, but they never did. Cheryl has said that she had written to Sean Palmer in prison many times. He never once responded. He never once expressed remorse in that fashion. I don't know if he said it at the trial or not, but he never expressed remorse in that fashion. And she said that if he had, it would have gone a long way to helping the family heal, just to know that he was sorry for his actions. That leads me to believe that he never said he was sorry in trial, but I don't know, guys. I also want to point out that if the program cared about, quote, meeting the needs of all parties involved, end quote, they should have been in contact with Donny's mom and dad, at least, if not the rest of his extended family. They all loved him. They should have been in contact with them. They should have learned more about the crime and found out more about the crime. But they did not do that, guys. They didn't, because they didn't even know about the ritual. I think they should have looked into that before letting him come to the institution and based a decision on that fact, and how the family, the actual victims, because the family was victimized too, right, of this crime, about what they felt. But that did not happen. That never happened. It's also interesting to note that while he was in prison, Palmer actually dated another woman from the Chatham area. He actually dated another woman from Chatham. This woman also had children, and they had conjugal visits. They really did. Yeah. Her family was extremely apprehensive about the two of them having a relationship, particularly since she had children. And I think the relationship lasted for a few years, at least. Her family would only speak anonymously. They must have some type of fear. They didn't want their family name out there. I mean, probably it's a little bit shameful to them as well that their daughter, or a little odd to them as well, that their daughter was dating a convicted offender. This guy was already convicted when they started to date, but a lot of people do that. Look at how many people wanted to date Richard Ramirez. The Menendez brothers got married behind prison walls. Paul Bernardo himself was supposed to be engaged to a woman not that long ago. It does happen. Regardless, the two of them dated, and the family was extraordinarily apprehensive about it. When he was transferred to BC, when Palmer was transferred to BC in 2012, the two of them did break it off. And the family said, the family was very, very happy about it. But the family did say, quote, she realized he was too self-absorbed for her liking, end quote. Self-absorbed for her liking. Seems to be a little bit narcissistic. He was very much into himself and what people could do for him, but regardless. Now, in 2016, Sean Palmer was actually supposed to be paroled, but he had it revoked. I have no idea what the reason for that is. Confirmation of why he had his parole revoked was never said, guys. Nothing was ever talked about with that. And as far as I know, most of the people involved do not know why his parole was revoked, but it was revoked in 2016. However, he was set free and clear in 2017. He had served all 11 years and 8 months of his sentence so he was set free. And when I say free, I mean free and clear, guys. There's no parole. This was manslaughter. There's no parole. Corrections Canada is not checking up on him. He can come and go as he pleases. He can do whatever he wants to do. He was set free and clear in 2017. The parole board, before they released him, though, would not give any information to Donny's family about what he was doing in BC. Not like they knew the Institute. I'm assuming they knew where he went. I'm assuming something had gone on, but they were never asked about it. It's really murky. When they asked about what he was doing while he was on day parole, they were never given any information. The parole board never gave them any information about it. This is kind of disturbing, because what if he was out with children while he was on day parole? A lot of people use day parole to work or visit family members. What was he doing during his day parole times? I really don't know, guys. He was quite far away. He was in BC, but I don't know what he was doing. It kind of reminds me of when we found out a couple years ago that Carla Famocha was volunteering at an elementary school in Quebec. Carla Famocha, you guys know who she is. Deal with the Devil, 12 years. She was the partner of Paul Bernardo. She's basically one of Canada's most well-known serial killers. Of course, she had the Deal with the Devil, 12 years. She served every one of those 12 years. But hers was a different case. So she served all of her time, but there are still certain conditions she has to meet. And one of them was that she couldn't be around children. Now, that may have been dropped at this point in time, because technically speaking, she was also free and clear to do whatever she wanted to do. She served her sentence, but very, very eerie. I don't think I would want her around my children. I know she does have children, but regardless, it kind of reminded me a lot of that, because the families, obviously, Kristen French, Leslie Mahaffey, I don't even know if her own family, I don't know. I know she talks to her sister on occasion. No, I know she talks to her parents on occasion. I'm not sure about her sister anymore, because Lori didn't want anything to do with what had happened. She was dealing with her own grief over her sister. So we know, I don't think anybody in those families knew exactly where she was or what she was doing. Of course, Cheryl and the rest of the family continues to be upset that Palmer was only convicted of manslaughter. Okay, that he pled it down to that. Manslaughter is a lesser offense. There's less blame put on the offender. It's more accidental in nature. And the penalties aren't very stiff for manslaughter. It's almost like, it's not even a heat of passion crime. It's almost like an accident. Say you push somebody and they fell in a well. If you go and tell the police, oh my God, they're in the well, and of course they show up dead, that's manslaughter. To me, the fact that he hid the body and then burned it later on and did everything in his power, he lied to Courtney about where Donny even was. To me, that does not sound like manslaughter, but he was able to get that deal. And remember, both the Crown and the defense were on board for this deal, and they kept saying he didn't intend to harm him. He did, but he didn't intend to harm him. So Cheryl said, quote, "Any way you look at it, the crime, question it, wonder about it, how, why, what was his intent, what was his reasoning for killing Donny? You can't get manslaughter out of any of those," end quote. That's what she had to say about the plea deal. She believes he should have gotten first-degree murder for it. So I'm assuming they know way more information than we do. And if not first-degree murder, definitely second-degree murder. I very much agree with that, but that is my way of, that's just me. Sean Palmer was last known to be living in BC, and that was in 2017, guys. I have no idea where he is now, what he's doing. He is free to live his own life. He is not on parole. He has no restrictions. I don't know where he is. And that's the end of it, guys. That's the end of the case, the two cases. We actually did 2 cases today. That's the end of it today. I'm sure you have a lot more questions than I was able to answer. Like I said, Chatham-Kent really tight-lipped with information. I got some of it from the CBC, some of it from papers in Toronto. It was very, very hard to find actual information on this case, but I was able to get some, and some of it's from memory as well. Obviously I'm of a certain age, so I was able to work in 2005. I'm not going to tell you my actual age, but I was at work when this happened. I do remember it. And also I had just moved home from Kitchener-Waterloo. That was also mind-blowing to me, the connection involved with that. But there's a lot of questions, guys, and I have a lot of questions myself. So what do you guys think about this crime? Do you guys think it should have been first-degree murder? Do you think there was intent involved in it? Like I said before, I do find it highly odd that he took a 22-month-old boy who wasn't related to him. I know they lived in the same house, but I don't know how long they had lived in the same house. He took a 22-month-old boy fishing without other children or other adults being involved. I find that odd. It might just be me. I do find it odd. I mean, he's a little guy. I don't know how well he could hold up the fishing rod, but maybe he may have truly loved fishing. I really don't know, guys. Like I said, I don't know a lot about it. I do find it odd for that, but do you think he intended to kill Donny? His old girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend from Chatham that dated him while he was incarcerated, did call him, quote, self-absorbed. Did he kill Donny to get rid of him so he could have Courtney all to himself? Did he kill him to keep him from being underfoot? I don't know what their relationship was like. I don't know if he was controlling. I don't know if he was possessive. I know nothing about that. I don't know even how he treated his own children. Do you guys think that he had hurt Donny before in the past, and because Donny was so little, he couldn't vocalize it? I'm sure if he did so, he did it while the two of them were alone. I know he would have never done it in front of the family because the family wouldn't have stood for it. Do you think it was a case of second-degree murder? I would lean more towards second-degree murder. I don't know if he intended, remember, guys, there's not a lot of information out there. I don't know if he ever intended to hurt the boy, but the fact that after he did that, instead of calling for help or even leaving him someplace where he could get help, he loaded him into a loaded him into a hockey bag, and then took him to a wooded lot in Cambridge where he later went back and burned the body, and had also told his mother that he was fine and sleeping downstairs. That reeks of something there, guys. I don't know, if it was manslaughter. Why'd you have to make up so many stories? Why did you do what you did? I know he said that it was to cremate the body in a indigenous ritual, which hasn't been practiced in hundreds of years, I might add. But I know he said he did that, but I just don't understand how you can get manslaughter from that. Manslaughter, like I said, less blame. The crime is usually more accidental in nature. Okay, it may have been an accident that he suffocated Donny, you would think, with his own children. He'd know better than to do that. But what he did with the body afterwards, and how he tried to cover it up, and that the first words out of his mouth were, "I'm not trying to cover up anything." Well, the first words out of his mouth with regard to the cremation ritual was that he wasn't trying to cover anything up. It seems really, really bizarre to me. Do you think he said that, the cremation thing, just so he could get moved to a minimum security prison and get all the rewards and benefits that he would have from minimum security? Teaching and holistic, and it's a less harsh atmosphere, and he gets to learn about new things. There's no fences, no electric fences that go around there or anything like that. You can basically walk off the property if you want to. Several people have. There's a guy right now who escaped from an institute in BC. He escaped in October, and he was there for murder and I believe rape, and he's wandering around somewhere in the States because he escaped. He just left. I mean, and to get day parole. I mean, do you think he did that because of this? Do you think this was merely a case of manslaughter? Do you guys want Sean Palmer around your kids? I myself don't think I want him around my kids. What do you guys make of the fact that we don't know where he is anymore? What do you guys make of the fact that Chatham keeps so much quiet? Have you guys heard about this case at all? Let me know, guys, in the comments down below. If anybody from Donny's family is watching this, or if any of Donny's family friends are watching this, I just want to let you guys know I am so, so sorry for what happened. I remember hearing about it, and I'm with you guys. I really do not believe that Sean Palmer should have gotten anything less than second-degree murder. Like, like I said, I can't prove intent, so I can't say first-degree murder, but definitely second-degree murder. I think he should have been monitored for the rest of his life by Corrections Canada. I think he should have that on his record. I think he shouldn't be allowed around children. It does seem to me, with what he did to Donny afterwards, that there was more to it than just manslaughter. I don't know if you guys agree with me. If you do, let me know down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this case, particularly since it's a case from my home area. And I do want to know, have you guys heard about this? Have you guys heard of any crimes that have come out of Chatham? There probably is one, and we are going to talk about it at some point in time, just not today. And just so I can leave you with a visual, guys, I will show you a picture of Sean Palmer. Like I said, I don't know if he's in the area. Trying to, sorry guys, it looks, I'm trying to get it so that is Sean Palmer right there. As of now, I believe he's 51 or 52 years old. He was born in 1969, I believe. I think he's around 51 or 52. Regardless, that is the story of Donny Clubb's tragic little life. 22 months old, energetic, fun-loving, happy, always moving little boy who just loved life so much. To be taken away from his parents at 22 months old is one of the biggest tragedies out there. Let me know what you guys think, and hopefully you guys liked this video. I know there was a lot of dog barking. Hopefully you guys liked this video. Hopefully you guys will want to subscribe to my channel. Hopefully you'll hit the notification bell that you guys know sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, and leave me some comments. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I hope to see you guys next week. Bye.